Yay, weather. I like weather. I like winter weather.
You do not like weather at all. That is a goddamn lie.
I don't like bad weather.
She
But I
likes
name a-
things she complains about.
Name
I
a
like-
weather you like.
I like snow.
Okay.
Not a weather when it's on the ground.
I like it when it snows.
I keenly recall every single time it either rains or there's thunder or lightning, you become petrified of tornadoes.
That's different.
She also does complain about the snow when she has to do stuff in it.
I only complain about that when I have to deal with idiots who can't drive in the snow.
Okay, I'll give you that. People, especially you get that fucker with four-wheel drive who thinks, you know what, I can just take this turn going 185 miles per hour and it's going to be fine, right?
Yeah, I have four-wheel drive.
Well, do you know
Yeah,
what the big
'cause-
problem is? Do you know what the official physiological response that humans have to snow is?
To hunker down and eat.
No, you're meant to die.
It's- I don't know if meant to is necessarily the right word. I kind of think that, generally speaking, physiologically, that would not be in a population very long if there was just a, at this point, your body is just meant to die.
You
The-
do
the-
realize that prehistoric humans made it through the Ice Age, right?
Yeah,
Meant to die, but they didn't. They didn't listen.
That's ice. That's not snow.
Okay. You wanna go through the subtle differences, Mr. Freeze?
That is a response worthy of my students. Oh my god. No, I've dealt with way too many jackasses in four-wheel drive vehicles. I drive my tiny little Saturn. I have watched people in Jeeps spin out on the expressway while I'm just tootling along, and I'm just like, yeah, just go 25 and not drive like a jackass, and you get there.
People misconstrue four-wheel drive with I have infinite traction, which you don't. You just can get out of a snowbank.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, hooray for winter weather.
Yay, winter weather.
Yeah, or sleeting and ice.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of ice. I don't dislike it strongly, but I refuse to drive in it.
That's the problem with snow after a week.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with snow after a week is that it stops being that nice light white light puffy stuff, and it just becomes grimy, disgusting dirt
Or ice.
Or ice.
or ice.
When I was in China, snow removal wasn't. And so you would just keep walking on it and it would pack it down into ice. And then after you had done that, they would send out road crews people with picks and shovels, and then they would break up the ice. But by that point, you already have to walk back and forth between where you live and where you work, and I forgot my fucking ice cleats.
Well, your big problem there is that you should have moved to a different part of China. It's a big place.
So you were actually going through Nanook of the North, just putting on your winter survival gear and your ice cleats and going out to go hit the ice caps and hunt seals.
I literally didn't take my ice cleats to China. They were in my apartment the whole time. Great place for them. But yeah, no, I literally would have needed them in China. It was ridiculous. And the heating system in my dorm worked really well because it was a foreign dorm. But the office that I worked in, the heating worked, but it wasn't really great. And then one of the apartments I visited I visited a couple times during the winter, and their heating was crap. And that was a really kind of unpleasant time because it was pretty cold. And there were some parts where in southern China, they don't get heat. Like, I think Guizhou and Hangzhou and Sichuan, I don't think they get heat. Because it never really gets below freezing there, but it does get into the 40s and even high 30s, but because it's southern China, they don't really have heat.
That's why I got pneumonia. That's why I got pneumonia in Lesbos, because all the houses are designed to lose heat, and there's no heating systems in them.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I guess like a few days ago. This is going to be pre-recorded, so this is completely dated. A few days ago, there was like 30 degrees in San Francisco, which is another city where, fuck it, you don't have heat. Why would you have heat? It's like 70 all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Except it's not. When I was down there, it was fucking freezing.
But you were also used to like the 95 to the 100 degrees that was in Kansas during the summer, so
that's like being used to like a screaming hell. That's
pretty much what Kansas is in the summer.
Kansas, yes, in the summer. I thought you were going to use that as a general.
No, Kansas in the summer is pretty much my literal idea of hell, with the 110 degrees with the 1,000,000,000% humidity.
We walked back one day. We were going for a walk one day in the spring, and we were just kicking through the leaves, and Amanda was like, "This is going to be my last autumn here. It's going to suck from now on."
Spring is fun.
No, she hates it.
Oh, right, you hate spring because of weather.
Fucking tornadoes.
Which you don't hate.
I like winter weather.
Okay.
Winter.
You just like iconically like crystalline memories of your past in Michigan.
Yeah, pretty much.
That you imagine as being winter weather.
There's nothing imagining winter weather when you have snow up to your ass.
Yeah, that's not normal.
It's wonderful.
The majority of people live in places where in the winter it's 80 fucking degrees.
I don't care. I want to live in Michigan.
It's nearly Canada, that's why.
Yes. I'm sorry, I keep remembering that story from the Buffalo Bills football game last weekend where they had a streaker, but they were in Toronto, so it was this Canadian guy, and the report said, in true Canadian fashion, the guy politely surrendered when security got within 5 yards of him. Oh, I miss Canada.
Did you have Tim Hortons?
Mm-hmm.
Were you that north? Okay.
Oh my god, I miss Tim Hortons. Oh my god. When I was taking biochemistry, it was a 9 a.m. class, I think. And the Canadians that would come across the border would usually pick up Timbits for the whole class. And they were so
nice.
Good. Oh.
Tim Hortons is like coffee, donuts, and breakfast foods. Although they do other things as well.
Their donuts are really, really good.
Yeah.
Yay. That makes me feel so much better.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
You also, you really make me hate Canadians.
Why?
Because all you do is tell me how awesome they are.
Okay.
We own them, you know.
Technically, you still do.
Oh,
Technically speaking, the Queen can still suspend Parliament.
Yep.
Yes. That happened on Australia once, right?
That happened to Canada as well.
Oh, did it happen in Canada? I didn't know that.
I believe it did, or at least it was threatened at some point, I thought.
Because I remember James telling us during the government shutdown, was like, what was it? Australia tried this once.
Yeah, Australia had a deadlock, and so they came in and fired the Prime Minister and said, you need to decide on a new Prime Minister. They couldn't get one, and so they fired the entire Parliament and called new elections.
Nice. Effective.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, we've got a coalition in England at the moment because we had the same problem, but they just picked somebody they were going to work with. So, and then proceeded to ignore them.
And I mean, really, basically, they call them digestives or biscuits. I mean, not cookies. Canada has Canada is surprisingly English, save for the fact that they like American football sometimes.
Sometimes. CFL owns. It does.
And let's not forget Kids in the Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like when SNL got bad, Kids in the Hall.
Yeah, I remember that.
This has been the Canada appreciation moment.
Although, just recently I realized that it's Rick Moranis in The Great White North. I never actually realized that.
Why did you not realize that?
I don't know.
Wait, why were you thinking about the Great White North, and why did you suddenly have an epiphany?
I was reading something about it. I don't remember what it was. But then I had to, go and actually watch an episode of it, and I'm sitting there going, is that Rick Moranis? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I didn't recognize him without the big, thick glasses, I guess.
So what are we talking about today?
Right. We're talking about repeatability in science and stuff like that.
Okay. So I guess let's start it then.
Good idea. Don't you agree, James?
James?
Yes.
I'm sorry I like Canada so much.
It's okay.
I don't know. I feel the need to apologize for that, apparently.
I like Canada. I've been there 3 times. It's a nice place.
It's weirdly like Canadian to want to apologize for James.
I guess so.
That's not Canadian though. That's actually something they've picked up from being English. Because I apologize for everything ever.
That's also very true. Of course, I do that too, but that's because I'm from the upper Midwest, which we get from Canada, which Canada gets from the British.
Yeah. The Canadian thing is being bizarrely useful in arresting themselves and stuff like that. We don't do that in England.
Yeah. So, did you guys see the paper on repeatability of measurements and shrinkage rates in the Great Gray Shrike?
I did. I read through that paper. That paper was pretty cool.
It's a pretty cool paper.
Great Grey Shrike is one of my favourite birds. It's a songbird that kills and eats other things, including small mammals.
Shrikes are pretty cool, and they're also called butcher birds because whenever they kill something, they'll hang it on something like a barb.
Some do.
That's true. Not all of them do it, but some of them do.
And it's almost an individual thing.
Really?
For some species. I mean, you see some Great Grey Shrikes will like thorn bushes. Others will use barbed wire. Some just don't do it. But yeah, it's kind of like having a larder.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they have the heads on display for all other birds.
No, just the entire
to know.
thing. One of the saddest things in the Animals of Farthing Wood is when all the mice have babies and they go, "We're going to be okay here," and then there's a shrike living in the area, and so they just find all the babies on a thorn bush later.
Yep.
Okay.
Animals of Farthing Wood. Really, really upsetting book as a child. Read him again older and realised that they're a thinly veiled kind of neo-Greenpeace kind of thing against any kind of encroachment onto the wild. Something that I don't necessarily disagree with, but is just terrifying to read as a child.
So we're talking like Fern Gully levels or like more subdued?
Animals carrying the heads of other animals once they've been hit by trains and stuff like that.
Fern Gully levels, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So holding like sacrificial totems of animals long past.
Do you remember, what was it? It wasn't Dark Crystal. It was like there were horror books with rats and mice.
Not
Nim.
Redwall.
Not Rats of Nim, is it?
No.
Yeah, Miss Bigsby and the Rats of Nim is not.
No,
Not where you
that's
think.
not a.
There was
no,
a cat.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of Banicula.
Oh, Banicula was so good. I love Banicula.
Banicula was about a bunny vampire, but it
So good.
sucked the juices out of carrots and vegetables. So it left them limp and, like, wilted.
That was so good. God damn it, now I need to go get Banicula.
I don't know if need is necessarily, and anyway.
Anyway, so the whole point of this paper was looking at
Deptford mice.
Did
What?
you look it up?
Yes.
Bedford mice?
Deptford.
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 Deptford. Deptford. Deptford.
Deptford. Okay.
Deptford.
So anyway,
Who's on first, James?
God damn it. So the whole purpose of this paper was to look at measuring certain morphometric taking certain morphometric measurements on great gray shrikes. These are typical measurements that we use in ornithology to look at population level variation. Thank you, that was the word. And then also morphometric differences between species that we can use for establishing functional morphology, differences in life habit, things like that. And so they looked at these and looked at how these measurements change when you get a freshly killed specimen versus when you measure something that's 10, 20, 30 years old. And there's a lot of physical change that goes through with these specimens. It's not like when you get a fossil. Most of the time you get a fossil and the fossil is a fossil is a fossil. Unless you prep it off, it's not gonna change a whole lot in storage. Now, I know that's not always the case. It's not always the case, but... No,
but this has implications for amount of time of decay before burial.
Yes, it does. And so the main thing that they looked at with this part of the paper is that there is a very significant amount of specimen shrinkage that goes on. And it does vary. There's a whole suite of literature on this, looking at how the shrinkage rates vary across different taxa. And so depending on what you're working with, the amount of shrinkage is going to be different. But when you're dealing with taxidermied museum skins, you're going to be dealing with this desiccation and shrinkage is essentially the point. And this is why when I did my dissertation, I actually couldn't use taxidermied museum studies. One of the big problems is that you can correct for this shrinkage, but it's only been done once as far as I know. And because the shrinkage rates are going to be different across different taxa, you'd have to figure out how to correct for it across all these different taxa. So, I mean, that's kind of the problem.
There'll be a way to work out like total water content of each individual and then do it by body mass, I'm sure, but that's going to require a very, very big study.
Yes, it is.
I think a more fundamental thing about this as well is they also tested the effects of various measurers.
Yes,
like
and that was the second point I was going to bring up. That's really interesting. But go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, where they basically took 5 different individuals and checked their measurements against each other and then tried to see how consistently people measure various parts of these anatomical features of the animals.
And I should stress that these are not novel measurements. These are very standard measurements in ornithology. Stuff that everyone is taught. And so it's not like they said, oh, well, measure this bizarre, weird measurement that we've never done before. It's like, measure the tarsal length. Everyone measures the tarsal length. That's a standard measurement that we use even when we're banding. Okay. So this was not something that people didn't know how to do. This was something that's a standard measurement across ornithology.
Well, it depends. The thing is, the difference comes in if you're using calipers, you're going to be more specific than if you're using a ruler. When I'm measuring things, I tend to round to the nearest millimeter. So that all varies. Also, some people will just habitually I'll include the tip of this thing that's sticking out the back when I'm just going to do everything that's on this one surface.
Yeah, well, what they found is that there were a few measurements that were fairly consistent, although they did show a decent amount of spread, and a few that were just terribly inconsistent.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What this does bring to mind is the talk we saw at GSA with the professor that had her undergrads measure stuff and then decided to check it, and then found that their measurements fit a perfect random distribution compared to her measurements of the actual material.
Well, I mean, this poses a really interesting question, because one of the suggestions that they give, at least as far as repeatability, is to acknowledge that the person doing the measurements is always a source of error. And so would we expect in any situation, if we were to do a similar thing where we have, other people's measurements as a whole group and our measurements in comparison, would we expect there to be a seemingly random distribution against them because we are our own independent source of error compared to a series of sources of error if you've got multiple people's measures in a group?
I mean, it's the same thing with any kind of field in general, anything beyond just measurements. The person themselves is a source of bias, and that's why it's always good to get a feel for a researcher that's done a lot of things within a field, in terms of what their biases are, in terms of like lumping synthetic species, or their views on how certain evolution might have worked out, or something like that. One thing that does come to mind as well is transposition errors, which are different from measuring errors. But there was one animal when I was doing my masters that I'd read about 4 or 5 things saying it was 155 centimeters long. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty big. That's interesting. When I looked at the original paper, it was described as being 55 centimeters long. I'm like, that's really weird. I'm confused by this. I didn't know which was right because everyone since had described it as 155 centimeters. So I got them to tell me the measurement of the actual thing. It's 55 centimeters. But the first guy that wrote about it added a 1 to the front by accident, and everyone since had just assumed that was correct.
I mean, that happens a lot. You often see sort of lines of incorrect citations. Like someone will either cite the wrong year at this one publication, and then you'll have several authors citing that publication's reference because when you're running through your reference list, it's like, oh, well, I added this, so I should look to this. Oh, it's that year, okay. And that error just continues to perpetuate.
My advisor's evil twin with a 1-letter difference in his surname.
But getting back to what you had said earlier, I don't know, this is just an idea that hit me. Are you suggesting almost like a personality-based vetting process? like is this like, are you suggesting that that science go the Roger Ebert route of putting your personality out there as a means of acknowledging your own personal biases,
Curtis,
or your own personal thoughts?
Curtis, that's exactly what I'm saying, and that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, that's kind of the truth.
I mean, there's one of the big guys in Euclid research. One of the things I learnt about him when I was at the Field Museum. No.
Are you talking about you in the third person again?
No.
What do you work on? Oh, you're James Lamsdale. What do you work on? I'm James Lamsdale.
No, one of the big people that worked on Eurypterids, they've written a lot of papers, and then one of the things I learned when I went to the Field Museum and looked at that actual material is that they just always assumed they were right because they are an expert. And my opinion of their papers has changed a lot based on this new information.
It is kind of interesting that as you advance in being a grad student, that you start out as a grad student, you're like, wow, these guys in the field, their stuff is, obviously, they're the experts, their stuff has to be right, it has to be amazing.
Do you? Really? Wow.
Some people. But then you start kind of growing as a graduate student and start doing your own research and start sort of going back and reanalyzing people's work, and you start thinking, maybe this isn't that great.
What you're describing is becoming jaded and cynical into your second and third year.
Yeah. That's kind of, yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like we could springboard this off into a more postmodernist kind of analysis of subjectivity in all things, but that's besides the point.
Don't we usually do that anyway?
I think to some degree it comes down to, at least Amanda, what you were talking about, is that the whole notion of thinking outside the box is fundamentally a relative experience. You can only think so far outside of what is previously established. So every time you come to something that someone has previously done, you're coming at it from a new perspective that's not inside the parameters that they were in, but you're in a whole new set of parameters that you don't realize.
The other thing I can tell you is every time you think you're coming up with something new, if you were to read German, you'd find a German that did that 100 years ago.
I thought you were going to go on the death of originality and that everything is fundamentally based off of something else. I mean...
Well, there's that too, but I've found every original idea I had, some German stole from me 200 years ago.
Oh, man. Those damn 200-year-old time-traveling Germans.
Hollywood, we have this one.
Yeah. We expect royalties for this, I tell you.
Fuck, we got to get that script out before we even publish this thing.
What are we going to call it?
The 200-year-old German. Wait, no. That might not work. That might be a terrible title.
Oh,
It'll
my
probably
God.
get turned into something like The Time Traveler's Wife.
Oh.
The time traveler's German? With the apostrophe.
No. Yes, the apostrophe
is.
The Time Traveler's German.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I should ask Martin if he wants to play the lead role.
He probably would, too.
And, of course, we have to have a cloying moment where someone says to the camera, the Time Traveler's German?
Yeah.
Breaking the fourth wall.
It should be someone like, I don't know. I'm either in my mind deciding whether or not we go like John Cleese to turn the role of the Time Traveler's German.
No.
Wait.
Wait.
I
got it. Gotta be Hitler.
Of course, but besides the point. The point.
By the way, I'm really sorry. That's mostly red.
Besides the point, John Cleese is playing the most horribly miscast Winston Churchill.
And Hitler. We're gonna Eddie Murphy this shit.
John Cleese in every fucking role.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Is the Time Traveler's German?
Oh my God. I hate you both so much.
Wait. The tagline. Guten Taben and Guten Maden. Guten Abend. Guten Taben and Guten Abend.
And then because it's Hollywood, they carry glockenspiels everywhere.
Just an entire, building that they're just carrying on their backs. Like the whole giant Munich-style glockenspiel, not just a... Yeah.
Yeah. That's the time machine.
Oh, yes, that's it. Man, we get Terry Gilliam to direct. This is now actually becoming a good movie. We need to stop this.
Oh, I can write the screenplay. Anyway.
Good.
I was going to say...
So, I guess getting on to what we said, the notion that ultimately we're all not the time-traveling German.
I was gonna say not meant to live in the snow.
It's funny, my mind
We're
went
meant to die in the snow.
That's like the final scene where he turns to the camera and says,
"We're meant to die in the snow."
And then it pans out and he's at Stalingrad.
Why does time-traveling Hitler not go anywhere but World War II?
No.
He should know better.
No, Hitler wasn't the time traveler. Hitler's the one that goes the time traveler's German.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, that's a completely different movie.
Wait. 200 years. It's Goethe. Yeah. Go philosophical on this one. German poets. Yeah.
And he meets Nietzsche.
And then they all go and have a drink with Kafka.
Oh God, let's try to focus here, guys.
But Marx picks up the tab. Marx has to pick up the tab.
And Hermann Goering's their driver.
Oh, man. So, getting back to what we were saying, not the time-traveling German.
No.
Getting back to all that, when we were talking about, being within your own boxes and the sort of innate subjectivity that can happen in some of these... Did you just like the term innate subjectivity?
No. I just made a terrible joke about being in other people's boxes, but it was in my head, so it's okay.
Well, I think you've already shared that with the class, James, so...
Right, so...
This is why these issues of acknowledging own personal errors in science is so important, because fundamentally, whenever we're doing an experiment, we want our data to be reproducible, because otherwise it's not an experiment.
It's not science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing about presenting your data, and having it in a format that other people can use, and then legacy of that data as well. Where's it going to be? I mean, and just being in the paper often isn't good enough these days.
Right, and that's... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Keep going.
That's just kind of it's an interesting role that technology is playing in the storage of data. We have found a lot of stuff cleaning out Larry's office and desk and things, and we found zip drives. Nobody fucking uses zip drives anymore. But there's data and manuscripts and stuff that Larry backed up that were on these zip drives. Now, thankfully, we found other ways to get that data off. But it could have been a serious issue. Because you have no way of accessing zip drives anymore.
I swear the best legacy format is if you could just put everything binary and just burn it onto vinyl.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think another element to this, though, is that because of, even when we're doing something that we think is fundamentally consistently repeatable, like just straight measures, there's a certain element of bias just in the way that we're holding the instrument, the way that we're deciding the points that we're actually measuring. There are elements to that, so that even when we have that hard data, having access to all the specimens and good museum collections for this kind of zoological data is really important, because you have to be able to go back to the source and see, oh wait, no, this 2 is in the wrong place. That shouldn't have been there. This is actually this size.
And this... Which one?
You.
Okay. And this is why this new trend or fad in some institutions, some museums, towards abolishing collections is absolutely terrifying. There's a whole subset of museums that are like, well, let's just get rid of collections and digitize everything.
Well, what people don't realize, and this actually feeds into what I was about to say, is in terms of measurements, the only primary data source is the specimen. Everything else is secondary data. Everything else is secondary. If you've got tables and measurements in a table, even that's secondary data. You can't treat that as a primary source of data. Everything you do from that is meta-analysis. But the thing is, you basically you assume that that's by and large correct, but you need to always be able to corroborate that on the specimen. Now, the reason it's important as well to do all this is because if the specimen's damaged or lost, and with fossils that's a big thing, you often have a fossil from the 1800s and you've only got half of it now, and at some point something's happened but no one's ever catalogued what happened to it. And so you have to look at what you've got and be like, okay, do what we have corroborates with these measurements? Okay, so we're gonna the rest of these measurements are probably fairly accurate, but now you'll never know for sure. And that's why you need both sources. You need good curation and storage of both your measurement data and the specimens that they're based off of.
I agree. I feel like, and I don't know if this would be a weird aside, but maybe we should touch a bit into, just because we've been talking so much about the potential errors that humanity has, talking a bit about, I don't know, scientific realism, the the basic philosophical construct that even though we are flawed individuals and all of our attempts to understand the world are ultimately a little bit imperfect, that there is an objective reality out there, that it's not just completely subjective.
I have a really bizarre thought that this kind of dovetails into Measure of Man, but I haven't read that recently enough to be able to reel out examples from it.
Go on.
Well, most of that is about how a lot of these studies that proved that certain races were superior or inferior to others were based on faulty data, and Gould makes it very clear that a lot of these people weren't actively trying to do it. It's just they had their assumptions and that their measurements fit these assumptions because their assumptions were biasing their measurements.
Exactly. Our own preconceptions do feed into the way we see the world. And it can certainly have an effect on the way that we collect or analyze our data. I certainly can't argue against that. The way that we perform science, the way that we gather our data and analyze it, is supposed to remove some of that bias, or most of it, but it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good, apparently. Stunned silence afterwards.
No. It's absolutely accurate. Yes, the peer review process is to keep you honest and to make sure that that you're not trying to pull anything, and also to just check the credibility of if you can actually do the things that you claim you're trying to test. And yeah, we're obviously coming into everything that we do with a certain degree of assumptions, sort of ideas of how we think the world works. And as I said, that's our box. And the scary thing is there's a box around all of us that we don't really know because we haven't been forced to the edge of it. Mm-hmm. Yes, James, you are trapped in a box. Continue to mime that you are trapped in a box in this audio pod. Well done.
Yes. And we see this progression through science through, the last 300 years. In the 16th, 17th century, science was heavily governed by religion, and you saw...
Depends on where you were in the world.
Fair point.
Yeah.
But in, a lot of the Western cultures, science was very heavily influenced by religion, and so you see sort of science, or you see the world through the lens of religion, and so you try to apply what you think, what you believe about the world in a scientific manner, but you are still influenced by what your box, and your box is this more religion-based explanation, and that just changes as we gather more and more understanding of how the way things work.
I always like to use miasma theory as a good example of this.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who don't know, miasma is the idea that bad smells cause diseases. And this was a prevailing theory for a real long time before anyone discovered germs. And miasma theory caused everyone to start cleaning up sewers, to not just throw their shit where they eat. And it actually increased hygiene dramatically, which coincidentally people lived longer and diseases went down. The fun thing about that is it's completely fucking wrong. It's not the bad smells that cause diseases, but it was a theory that that they came up with that was correlative. It actually had a correlation, and it worked until we figured out more information about the problem.
It's one of the rare times in medicine where treating the symptoms actually kind of helps.
Yes.
Hygiene, generally a good thing to have.
Yes.
But one of the other things, we just found something that cited one of the bird papers that Amanda was on, and it's an engineer who's tried to discover some stuff on bird flight, and you can see the engineer bias here. Their model doesn't look a thing like a bird. It's a fucking cone made out of polystyrene with the wings made out of cellophane, and they've used that to sort of test flying styles. That in no way would ever fly or is anything like an actual animal, but that's how engineers think. They think of how can we approximate these things into the simplest shapes possible, and that's what they've done.
Matt has a T-shirt that says, "You know you're an engineer if," and then a series of things, and one of them is you'll model a horse as an oval if it makes the math easier.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, we are all looking through our own lenses. I mean, we look at the world through the lens of the geologist or the biologist or the both. But there are, the people who look at the world through the lens of the physicist, and
And those people are assholes.
My dad taught physics. I'm going to tell him that you called him an arsehole.
No. Physicists are nice people. One of my best teachers in school was a physicist. He used to claim that too much cocaine had made his hair fall out, and also he was showing us different types of radiation. We had alpha and beta, and we couldn't have gamma because we'd all die. And it was like, okay, so like the alpha is okay because it can't get through skin that much. Beta, you just can't let it, go on you. And then he dropped it and it span around on the table at groin level. And he goes, "You're probably all infertile, but it's okay. You won't find out for quite a few years."
Oh my god. Well, all right.
So what I'm saying is physicists are pretty awesome sometimes.
Okay.
James hates physicists. James thinks physicists are pretty awesome sometimes.
James also loves and hates himself.
This is a big
James
gain
is
for you
also
physicists.
Gollum.
It burns, it shocks, it freezes?
Yes. He hates and loves the ring as he hates and loves himself.
Who's the ring? Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Anyway.
But I know that's going to be misconstrued by you bastards. I can't say that. I was going to say
bastards.
I always love sausage, and I was just like, you're going to assume I'm not talking about sausages. So,
well, I was gonna. Well, never mind.
Low hanging fruit, James. We're above that.
Yes.
Now go put a sausage in your mouth.
Which one of us are you talking to?
Damn.
That was really well done.
That was.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah.
Fuck
I mean,
you,
I
by
had
the way.
I had felt really bad for going for that joke, and I'm really glad you redeemed that, because...
So maybe we should take a break?
Yeah, we've got some business to attend to.
Yeah. Oh, fuck you! God damn it, James. That's not going in the fucking podcast.
I don't know if I can edit around that.
I'm gonna kick your ass.
We'll be right back.
There's a big fucking wooden pole over here, and I'm gonna beat him to death with it. Lake State scored. Now it's 4-1.
Yay! It's not completely embarrassing.
Yeah,
only
they don't
mostly.
get shut out,
Yeah.
This fucking team.
Is the goalkeeper sick?
Huh?
Is the goalkeeper sick?
Maybe he's just having an off night. It's weird because it's Kapalka and he's usually really good. But I know the first goal was just a complete fluke. I mean, it was just one of those weird fluky goals. But yeah, I guess the other three were just because we had no defense. Like, it's
the
not
other three
Kapalka's
were
fault.
equally fluky.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, you could be the best goalkeeper in the world, but if you have to literally save 10 shots every 2 minutes...
Yeah. Some of them are going to get through.
Yeah, defense is really more important.
Especially because he does have a habit of going down on hard pucks.
Yeah.
So when you're down, that's... If you don't get it, it bounces back, it's gone.
Yeah, if there's any kind of rebound, you're just screwed. So James texted me on Thanksgiving and said Paula just showed up dressed in Packers gear looking really sad.
Yeah, and then you texted her, didn't you?
No, I texted James back and said, ha 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 ha, poor Paula.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
to which then Paula just gave a really angry face when James was like, Amanda just texted, ha 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 ha, poor Paula.
Well, the thing was, I assumed that the Lions had lost because I should have realised they'd won because I got about 5 texts from you about how terrible they were, and then you went quiet, and that's generally a sign, actually, that they've started to do well.
Yes.
So you only run to James when things are bad.
Yeah, I just bitch at him.
Okay.
But I felt bad, but in all honesty, it was just nice that the Lions had ruined someone else's Thanksgiving for once.
I just want to say that because of the echo, it keeps flashing to James's face, just looking really sad while you were saying that, and I couldn't stop laughing.
Stupid echo.
You were just like, you were saying things, your voice would occasionally echo to James's mic, so then I just see James just taciturn face as you're like, I was just so glad.
I just like when things are really bad, like when things are like the worst ever, that's when I'll go to James.
But only to bitch.
Let's move on to like greener pastures, shall we?
Fair enough.
So what else do you want to talk about? I mean, obviously the other element to this, besides, I guess we harped a bit on, individual researcher bias and how we need to be sort of acknowledging that whenever we're doing any of our measurements, and acknowledging that measures are going to have some degree of bias just based on our own human imperfections. I guess the other thing was taphonomic. Do we want to talk about that a bit?
Oh yeah, sure. That's an interesting thought that didn't occur to me on the first reading that I did of this paper, but now that you brought it up, it's actually a very interesting concept.
So I guess getting to, this is the skin shrinkage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
dramatically changing the measurements of the characteristics. And I guess, James, we could even go into a little bit of some of those studies looking at taphonomy affecting vertebrate phylogeny.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. James.
Okay.
I guess if you want to talk about that.
I was just saying, are you going to refuse to talk the entire time after this? But okay, yeah, no, fine.
I was trying, but Amanda will die. So, I might need to go and give CPR in a minute.
Don't get hopeful.
No. I got it. Where do you live?
Where do I live?
Because I was going to say I know where you live and then realised I don't.
Yeah, I know. So you're just staring daggers at nothing on the screen. My God, she is really cracking up over there, isn't she?
She looks like a squirrel. She's just like...
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. Just the hands right next to the face, quivering a little bit like a little kid that was just promised candy. Uh-huh. Breathe deep. Breathe deep.
Okay, sorry, what were we going to talk about?
Have some tea.
Right. Have some tea. Tea is good. That'll help soothe the sore vocal cords after all that.
Anyway, right. So, there was a really cool study that looked at, taphonomy in vertebrates and looking at how as you decay, the vertebrate actually looks more and more primitive, and so it actually can affect the phylogeny. And I don't remember what paper that was. Do you remember?
I know there were a number of papers on it. It was the Sansom paper. We talked about it maybe 10 podcasts ago.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't remember that, which isn't surprising. But that's a really shut up, for God's sake.
No, I just like James's like weirdly knowing smile when you said, I forgot about that. And James just goes,
because I forget about everything.
Yeah.
Well, you forget about anything good. You just remember the bad things.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
So, yeah, I guess in a way, I don't know, I was just making a weird parallel that these kind of issues can also be important. Like this notion of the skin shrinkage affecting your measurements because it's changing the dimensions of the bone as time goes on, or at least the dimensions of the thing that you're measuring on the bone.
Yeah, it's changing the dimensions of soft tissue, and you're measuring the soft tissue.
Yeah.
Um,
And I say this is something that, if you're looking at paleontological specimens, you could theoretically think there are two different species if you've got delays between burial and some that are buried immediately.
That's potentially especially true when you're talking about specimens that are known only from soft tissue.
exactly.
Like,
Mhm.
is it possible? Do you think that some things could show characteristics based upon decay? I mean, I guess you would assume
there is a big debate about
Blank stare.
You carry on what you're saying, and I'll get the word eventually.
Okay. I guess the one thing I would assume that you'd probably be able to see decay. Like in a lot of fossil specimens with exceptional preservation, you can see ragged edges where there's obviously been some sort of decay. But I suppose it's possible that there's cryptic decay somewhere. You've got it, James. What is it?
No. What are these things? They're like,
What are the
Crinoids?
what
No.
crinoids? This is the worst forms of trades. Sex.
Stems?
What?
In
Stems?
Mistaken point. Come on.
the Ediacaran.
Ediacarans. That's right. Ediacarans have, of course, this solidified external.
How is sticking your finger into your other fist like a hole the Ediacaran? That is the
stem of the holdfast.
That's sex.
I'm going down on it. You're going sideways.
You can go many ways.
Nope, that's the title of the podcast. Right, so you were saying about the Ediacaran fauna, James?
Yes, the Ediacarans. It's been suggested that a lot of the diversity, we're looking at just different stages of decay. Like some of them are ones that were buried, some are ones that have died and fallen flat and started to rot, and some of them are just like the holdfast and ones that have completely rotted away.
Okay.
I think I've heard that somewhere, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Ediacaran are so weird that we're
we don't know.
We don't know what they are.
Yeah.
We don't know if they were anything. It's just they could be doing anything.
God damn it, James! Stop sticking your finger into your fist. Does not work on an audio podcast.
No, that's not what I'm doing it for. I'm just trying to make sure that you guys can't have a proper conversation about anything.
So just for the rest of the entire conversation, you're just gonna be going.
No, because it's actually a surprising amount of effort.
It does, it really does. It's the friction. If you lubricated that up, it'd be way easier.
I mean, after the first 20 minutes, there's just no energy left.
Yeah. You're tired, maybe you just want to watch TV and go to sleep.
Fucking hate both of you. Anyway, no, yeah. So the Ediacaran faunas are potentially a really good example of that, of the whole taphonomic. I don't want to say bias, but influence, maybe.
Yeah, taphonomic influence.
God damn it, James.
The thing is, I think this is distracting me more than it's distracting you guys.
I'm pretty sure it is.
You're not even looking at the screen, Amanda.
I know, that's why I do this.
I think the funnier thing really is that it came into your vocal, your performance. You're like, taphonomic bias. That was the most lascivious way I've ever heard that fucking said.
I can make anything lascivious if I try hard enough.
Oh, I fucking hate both of you.
No,
You've already said that before.
I know. It bears repeating.
She doth protest too much.
So much like science, it bears repeating and repeating and repeating to make sure that you get the same result.
That's what science needs, repeating bears.
So, wait. Oh, no, wait. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result.
Exactly. So sanity is so science is almost insane, but not quite.
Not quite, yeah.
Because what happens is people do the same thing again and again and again, get different results, and try to find the one common cause.
which, I mean, in some cases, at least as far as this analysis suggests, is it might just be measurement human bias.
Stop
Or
trying
error,
to bring
rather.
it
Not
back
bias,
into the
but error.
What?
Bias, error.
Yeah, error.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything else to discuss about this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Oh, well, one
Well-
thing we wanted to mention was, we sort of touched on it earlier, but we wanted to talk a little bit more about the storage and accessibility of data.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
there's
yeah.
one thing that comes to mind immediately, which is some people make it very, very difficult to get to hold of their phylogenetic matrices.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of those things where it's really important to have the data if you want to see what's going on. And the same thing, you can get macroecological studies where people don't like you to know the faunal data set that they're using and stuff like that.
Yeah, typically with that kind of stuff, I mean, at least macroecological studies, they'll usually cite like databases that they pulled information from.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, there is some repeatability, even if they're not putting their data sets out there, being like, we use this, these are the following data that we excluded because of blank, and then etc. But yeah, I'll agree with you. If you have a large data set that's being used for some major like, I guess, biogeographic or macroecological study, and you're not making that information available, then you are potentially affecting repeatability of your experiment.
Mm-hmm. You get this interesting crossroads where people that are using the one data set for multiple things don't want that to go out there because they want to use it for more stuff. But
yeah, and I mean, to some respect, I understand when you've spent a lot of your time and energy building up a database, you want some degree of recognition, and when you put that stuff out there, you're typically not going to get recognized. Your database might get cited, but you might not.
Well, the way it should work to my mind is the first paper that uses that database should always be cited when you use that database.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes the most sense to me.
database from da-da-da.
Yeah, and I think that's usually what happens when you have these smaller databases. But again, you can understand human frailties wanting to keep your data to yourself because, I'm still working on something and I've got that one project I'm going to do. And
yeah, and people are always worried that somebody else is going to do what they want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the phylogenies are concerned, I mean, the only thing that separates a phylogenetic program from a complete mystery magic black box that you magically throws out like evolutionary relationships is the character matrix. Like, that is the raw data that is going into your analysis. Those are all of your every single character coding, a 0 or a 1, is a hypothetical homology statement. You're assuming that this characteristic is evolutionarily a statement of homology, that it's a characteristic that is shared by multiple taxa through evolutionary descent, and then you throw all those into that analysis, and then you test that. And so the only way to really understand how a phylogeny is generated is to be able to go through and see all of the assumptions of homology that were made in creating that data set in order to understand where they were coming from when they got that.
Mm-hmm. But interestingly enough, as somebody that's sometimes tried to look at these things from other published analyses, having the matrix in a table in the paper isn't actually putting it out there for people to use. It's impossible to get the data out of that without retyping it. Ideally, you need the actual Nexus files, and you need well-annotated character lists, and very, very rarely do people do that either.
Well, I guess this is leading into
saying that I am innocent of poorly annotated character lists myself, but
I was going to say, I guess this is leading into whether intentionally or not, you had discussed potentially talking about Morphobank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, James has used Morphobank more than I have, but I mean, I've talked a little bit about it when I'm applying to grants and saying, because Morphobank is a freely accessible repository, essentially, for data You can store it in pretty much any file you can store, or not file, format. You can put in the Nexus files for your
phylogenetic
thank
analyses.
you. Yes, phylogenetic analyses. You can upload raw data directly to, the site in forms of Excel spreadsheets or whatever the fuck.
You can input it directly into the site. They have flash screens that let you do that, although you are reliant on the internet connection then.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really a fascinating resource. And again, it's totally free. It's totally free to sign up. If you want to access, or if you want to access data or upload anything, all you have to do is input a valid email address.
You can download the data without needing to even register.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For some
registering
reason, I thought that you had to register.
Registering is specifically if you want to be a content creator.
Oh, okay. So that's even better.
Yeah.
And it's all each individual project is archived by Google. The bots pass out each project as well, so you're going to get hits through random web searches.
Yep.
Yeah. And as far as from the content creation side, you can set up any number of collaborators that you want to be working on it with you. And furthermore, you can also do things like leave it away from the Google bots if you're just starting it out and you don't want to have that data out there because it's not in a finished state.
Yeah, you can set it to hide any unfinished projects so that only you, I think, and or your collaborators. What the fuck is that word? Collaborators.
Collaborators.
Yeah. Can see it.
Collaborators.
This actually leads to some interesting things because I have some projects I started on there ages ago, and then I'll be like, actually, that's not going to happen. I'll just reuse this, change the title. So they're on like Project 1100 now, but one day I'll publish one which is Project 490.
Nice.
Wait, you just number them?
They're numbered automatically.
Oh, okay.
So the permalink is like P491.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because I thought you were just numbering them like you had a catalog in your head of, this is Project 1562.
No.
But it's really a really interesting source, and it's funded by NSF, and it's permanent. They're never going to kick your project off the website for any reason.
And it's not just phylogenetic data, that's the cool thing. You can put measurements in, and you can put photographs of the specimens themselves. You can label the photographs.
If I get to do the project that I want to do for a postdoc, I'd be uploading all of my data as we published it to Morphobank. And, that would include a ton of photos. It would include, measurement tables and important comparative work. So, it's not just phylogenetics. It's pretty much anything that involves specimen-based research.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about it as well is the citation itself goes on the project. So if somebody only found the project and couldn't get to the paywall paper, they could still cite it as you should read the paper if you can, but if you get hold of the data and use the data, they still have the right citation to use there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is, it's a little bit, it's maybe a little bit off field from what we were talking about with the measurements, but this is still getting into a really important element of repeatability. Yes. By putting your data out there so that anyone can get to it, and anyone can get to it, then it makes it testable by anyone, which is really the only way that science can function, because we are human. We are going to make mistakes, we're going to make errors, or we're going to come into things with certain biases, as we had discussed with, mismeasure of man. And in the future, we want to make sure that we can put that out there so that other people who come at it from a different perspective can show us all the ways that we're completely fucking wrong.
Yep.
It's okay, though, because they're going to be completely fucking wrong in other things that they don't even realize.
And then the sun will go supernova and the cycle will end.
Wasn't exactly where I was going with that, James, but,
or it'll
thanks.
snow.
Or it'll snow, right. It'll snow, and then we're just fucked, man.
Totally fucked.
Have a Merry Christmas.
I would say Happy Hanukkah, but Hanukkah's over.
Indeed, indeed. All right, well, I guess on that cheery holiday note, I've been Curt.
I've been Amanda.
And I'm James.
Signing off.
went well.
Yeah.
That went surprisingly well.
I thought that went very, very well. Yes, very good.
Especially with how bizarre we all started out.
Oh, splendid,
Yeah.
splendid, if you want to do a Mike Benton.
Splendid.
His favourite word is splendid.
Splendid.
Okay.
So, because we didn't do it earlier, hi guys, welcome to Paleo After Dark. Just put that somewhere at the start.
Natch, I'll get right on that.